private prisons are immoral. They're also killing us economically in this state. I have a plan for my first 100 days, a written plan. One of the things that I'll do during those first 100 days is to end contracts with private prisons in Arizona. Best estimates are that we overpay for prisons by about $5 million a year. Once we end those contracts, that's $5 million that we have right there to invest in retraining folks who are coming out of the system. But I'm really interested, and I think it is complicated. I think it's very complicated because under my leadership, we will cut the number of people that we have in prison, period, by returning to early release programs, using alternative sentencing. We're going to move away from putting nonviolent criminals in prison at all. That means that our prison population is going to go down significantly. My goal is to get that $1 billion that we spend every year on criminal justice cut in half by the end of my term. But here's where it becomes complicated. There are whole towns in Arizona whose economy is based on that private prison system. And so we need to not only have retraining programs for people who are coming out of the system, we need to offer retraining programs, job placement services, and economic development for those individuals and economic development for those towns. So this is complicated. This is going to require, I'm going to say it again, more revenue in our budget. Under a Fryer administration, we will not be focusing on how can we cut taxes. We will be focusing on how to reverse those tax cuts so we have the revenue that we need to do the things that are important to the people of Arizona.
David, I appreciate that you talked about the racial implications of this issue, because this does not affect every neighborhood equally. We have a situation here where our African American, particularly males and Latino males, are disproportionately impacted by this issue. It is personal to me. Come from a neighborhood where a lot of folks around me, a lot of young men whose lives were derailed as a result of our emphasis on incarceration here in Arizona. 48% of offenders in prison are there for nonviolent offenses. And you heard a lot up here. Closing private prisons, absolutely. Rehabilitation, we certainly need to do that. But the bigger question is, why isn't it happening in Arizona? I was having a conversation with somebody just last night in Flagstaff about all these ideas that were happening in other states. And I said, why aren't they happening here? And the answer really was the private prison industry has a stranglehold on the legislature and on our leadership. And one of the reasons why I don't think that they're releasing it or doing anything about it is because it's not in their neighborhoods. It's not right in front of them. Folks, I'm going to be a voice for those neighborhoods because I'm from those neighborhoods. And I recognize how our failure to address criminal justice in Arizona is not only ruining lives, it is a bad economic decision. And so yes, we'll close private prisons, and yes, we'll focus on rehabilitation. But we've also got to take a step before that and look at what's happening in public schools and make a commitment to close the school-to-prison pipeline as well. We've got to do that. Quickly, my life could have taken a lot of different turns except for the intervention of a counselor. And I think it is absolutely unconscionable that we've got one counselor to every 900 students in Arizona. We need to change that for our young people.
Earlier this year, Congress passed a budget that allocates a large increase of federal dollars to every state to improve child care assistance. Arizona's share of the new funding is $56 million per year. These funds could be used immediately to provide relief to families, and they come at no cost to the state. But Governor Ducey and the legislature failed to adjust the state budget to allow state agencies to spend these federal dollars. This is significant because Arizona's Child Care Assistance Program helps low-income working families to offset the cost of child care so they can continue working. The rates that Arizona reimburses to child care centers and homes for providing this care have not been revised in 18 years and are the lowest in the nation. Many providers have said they will have to shut their doors to children using assistance, and others must charge families large co-pays that add more barriers. Just as being last in K-12 teacher pay leaves our students behind, being last in child care rates leaves many children out of quality learning in child care and preschool. A lack of consistent quality child care also has serious impacts on Arizona businesses, as parents are often left with the choice to quit working or leave their children in unsafe working conditions, in unsafe situations. As governor, would you support finding ways to use the federal child care dollars as soon as possible to raise the reimbursement rates for child care and preschool education and strengthen early learning options for Arizona children? And we'll begin with Pt2.
Is that a yes or no question? The answer is yes. Yeah. But here's the thing. I mean, what we're talking about is the way in which the state of Arizona has created barriers for employment. At the YWCA, we provide workforce training, business counseling, and training, leadership development for thousands of low-income women every year. Many of them are immigrants. I have never met such hard-working people in my entire life. In some of our programs, we literally have 3 generations of women taking these classes and coming for help to get jobs. But the state of Arizona has continually created one barrier after another to make life harder for these women and families rather than easier. What's a barrier to employment? Having affordable, accessible, safe, quality child care. Having family leave, paid family leave. Having health care. Having access to public transportation. You see, at the bottom line here is that we're not talking about political issues. These aren't political issues. These are moral issues. We have decided, as our leaders have decided, that they care more about big companies and the wealthiest people in our state than they do about the people of our state. What I will bring to this office is this commitment, that every single policy I write, every bill I sign, and every budget I draft will be done through a human rights lens that includes racial justice and gender equity. We're going to do what's right for the people of Arizona for a change.
I still remember the day that my wife and I went off to work and left our then 3-month-old daughter in child care. And I studied education. And I studied the idea, and I understood the statistics and how important it was those first few years of life. But I didn't imagine how hard it would be to walk away from our daughter at that age. Now, fortunately, we left her in the hands of my mom. And I couldn't have thought of a better way to do that, but I remember that because I know that that is not the reality of every Arizonan. That many of them don't have an option, or are leaving them in maybe care that they may not be their first preference. I also recognize that we give lip service to this idea that our youngest are our most important resources. That is not lip service to me, folks. I fully recognize that those first years of life are the most important formative years of anyone's life, period. I had the opportunity to spend a little time in Finland, and I saw what the Finns do in those first years of life. And maternity leave for a year long, for example. Opportunities for children to stay with their families as long as possible. And educational opportunities that began at a very early age, at the age of 3. And I saw young lives beginning on the right foot in the right direction. And I come back here, and I don't understand why we are not making that same commitment. And so the answer, David, is yes, absolutely. But this one is on behalf of families, on behalf of single women, and on behalf of others who are looking to develop families and grow and do really the things I've had a privilege to do. And the only way we can do that is to making sure that our youngest are taken care of, and that is focusing on health care. Thank you.
This is a classic example about how Governor Ducey and the legislative majority are not governing for the people of Arizona. They're governing for a couple of Kansas billionaires and the network that funds them. This is money that does not cost Arizona anything. It's $56 million. That's why during budget process, I worked with my colleagues in the Senate to try to amend the budget to include the ability to take this money. And that's why I and my other fellow Democratic leaders in the Senate issued a demand to Governor Ducey to call a special session right away to both allow us to take this money and to address school safety and finally enact universal background checks. We'll get to that question later, I'm sure. But Governor Ducey has not responded whatsoever. This is money that we are leaving on the table that could be used to be able to make sure that our kids are being kept safe. And this is sadly not the first time that this has been pursued in this way. All my time in the legislature, I've watched child care subsidies be cut, be capped, and watched the bad effects coming from that. When this happened in 2009 with Governor Brewer and the legislative majority, and child care subsidies were cut, we saw a direct correlation with the lowering amount of kids who could be in child care and the increasing amount of kids who were referred to CPS and later DCS for neglect cases. We should not be putting young parents in crisis in the position of having to choose between either going to work and leaving their kids in a possibly unsafe situation or staying at home and not having enough money to feed or care for that kid. This is not something that should be a partisan issue. In fact, child care subsidies were invented by Newt Gingrich in the 1990s. And yet the ideologues in the legislature and Governor Ducey refuse to understand that investing in this helps everybody rise. That will change.
The past year has seen unprecedented levels of grassroots activism at the state capitol. Thousands and thousands of Arizonans who are fed up with the status quo have organized and mobilized, demanding change on the issues they care about. Those issues will no doubt continue to be at the forefront of concern for many Arizonans next year, and one of these candidates, should they become governor, will be asked to address them. Tonight, we've invited 3 people who are statewide leaders and advocates on 3 of those critical issues: K-12 public education funding, affordable housing, and gun violence. Each has a question for the candidates. The first person I would like to invite to ask a question is Noah Carvelis, an elementary school music teacher at Tres Rios Elementary in the Littleton School District, and one of the primary organizers of the Red for Ed movement and Arizona Educators United. Noah?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for being here and appreciate all the conversation on education funding. It's great to hear. So as any teacher here, any student, any parent, and probably most everybody here can tell you, and we all understand, is that our schools are in a state of crisis. They truly are right now. And my question is, what funding mechanisms do you support? We've heard some of those, but what funding mechanisms do you support to get us out of this education crisis? And then what does that money go towards? What is that vision of what Arizona's schools could and should be?
We'll start with David Garcia.
Sure. Well, I think I'm going to repeat the question again. It is about investing in ed first and foremost, closing tax credits and closing corporate loopholes. I mean, I think those are the 3. To your broader question, look, I believe that we need to treat teachers as professionals. That is my intent as governor. And treating teachers as professionals means 3 things. First and foremost, it means paying teachers as professionals. And my standard is being able to stay in the classroom and raise a family. If you cannot meet that standard, it is not a profession. If you've got to take another job in order to make ends meet, it is not a profession. And you will never hear me thank teachers for their service. Because this isn't service, this should be a profession. I have deep respect for teachers and their training, and particularly what they're able to accomplish in the classroom, number 1. Second, we need to let our teachers teach again. We have a fascination with standardized testing. And we are taking joy, we're taking creativity away from the classroom. I believe teachers a lot of times are like artists. They want to get up and create and do something interesting. That's what I love about being a teacher and about being an educator. And what we do is we take them and we put them and say, here, stay in this box. We can't expect our best and brightest and our most creative to stay there. And by the way, not only that, our students are missing out on their ability to be creative, come up with brand new ideas. So we're going to move to real-world outcomes that are going to make a difference in students' lives and are going to change teaching and learning in the classroom. And number 3, educators are going to be at the table to make education policy. Teachers are a profession where policy is made all about them, all around them, and they are not the ones at the table. Many of you saw this at the legislature. And you have my commitment that education policy will be made with educators first and then taken out to the broader community instead of the other way around.
First of all, thank you for your leadership in this referendum. After railing to empty galleries in the middle of the night on budget night for 11 years, those galleries were full. And not just the galleries, but the first floor lobby and the third floor lobby. It was like when the airport gets closed when the flights are canceled. Everyone sprawled out all night watching the live proceedings on TV. Incredible, that experience of having tens of thousands of teachers there, like a village, for a week, witnessing what happens during our budget, and witnessing the way that they have attacked public education for my entire time in the legislature. My parents were both public school teachers, so I've had this passion for public education since I was a kid. My youngest daughter, Gigi, just graduated from Tucson High last year, number 17 in the class of 755. Big urban public district school, and I saw from a parent's eye view the devastation of our public education system. At Tucson High, they had 10% of their classrooms locked away because they're hazardous to inhabit, directly because we suspended the building renewal formula, something that we enacted in 1998 to say how much money we had to spend on keeping our schools in good shape. So we've only been spending 10% of what that should be. And what happens when you do that is not only do you have schools falling apart in dangerous conditions, you also don't give local tradespeople jobs. So you're hurting local economies at the same time. At Tucson High, they have a third of the computers they need, and the average age of those computers is 12 years old. And computer years are longer than dog years, so that's particularly bad. And they have only 6 counselors for 3,200 kids. And that's pretty good considering the 1 to 900 ratio in the rest of the state. This is not something we can tolerate. That's why 52% of our classroom teaching positions right now are either vacant or held by somebody without proper qualifications. And other states are treating us like a farm team. We have to act on this now. That's why we need to have Invest in Ed. That's why we needed the $405 million I voted for in the budget this year. And that's why we need the corporate tax loopholes to go forward.
So I want to actually answer your question, Noah, which is about funding above and beyond or Invest in Ed. So I think that there are a couple of things that we need to do. And you also asked about our vision. My vision is that the best school for every kid in every neighborhood, everywhere across Arizona, is the local district public school. That's my vision. Now, I'm going to wade in some dangerous political territory, but that's why I'm in this race, because I think we need to talk seriously about what's going on in the state. Number one, I'm going to support Invest in Ed, and we're going to get it passed. Then I'm going to talk with you all about getting Prop 108 reversed in 2020, because that will untie our hands and allow us to raise taxes. Secondly, I'm not going to sign a budget that has tax credits for private schools. Our public money should not go to pay for somebody's religious practice. I'm going to do that notwithstanding all the laws that say otherwise, because the legislature does that all the time. But here's the big, I want to say elephant in the room, because it really is, and that's the charter schools. Charter schools, as far as I'm concerned, are not public schools, because they are not accountable to the public. They're not accountable to taxpayers. I'm going to advocate for the 800,000 or 900,000 students in Arizona who go to charter schools. And I'm going to take quick action as governor. Number one, I'm going to sign an executive order that covers public education, and it will include holding charter schools to the same standards, environmental standards in terms of testing water, and we're going to release funding for any public school that has to absorb kids from a charter school that has closed. And I'm going to create a task force made up of students, teachers, parents, and we're going to create a 3-year plan to winnow the number of charter schools to only the very best, and only the ones that are really doing something that the local district public school can't do. We're going to do that within 3 years.
serves the executive director of the Arizona Housing Coalition, a collaborative association that leads in the efforts to end homelessness and advocate for safe, affordable homes for all Arizonans. Joan.
Good evening. Thank you. You guys hear me? Can you hear me now? Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. As David mentioned, we are a statewide collaborative association working to an end to homelessness and advocating for safe, affordable housing. That safe, affordable home is the foundation for Arizonans to thrive and is the key to ending homelessness. But Arizona, specifically Phoenix, ranks as the ninth most unaffordable city for renters. Meanwhile, in Flagstaff, a minimum wage worker must work 64 hours a week to afford a modest one-bedroom apartment. And if that renter is a single parent, they're further strained to put food on the table, find safe childcare, and access preventative care. If elected, what priority and investment will you commit to ensure that all Arizonans have a safe, affordable place to call home?
Begin this question with Steve Brown.
Well, thank you, first of all, thank you, Joan, for your service, because I do believe we can end homelessness in Arizona. And to that end, the most important thing we can do is to fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And as you know, we worked this last session. This is one of those creative solutions that an artist running for governor comes up with. But I had a bill that I actually got heard in the Senate Finance Committee last session that would take advantage of what is been a real problem in recovering revenues from people who owe it to the state. If an out-of-state commercial property sells their property in the state of Arizona, current law is that they owe income tax on the profits from that sale. The problem is they don't file, and the DOR doesn't go after them. So we're losing between $8 and $10 million a year from out-of-state property owners on money that is rightfully owed to the state of Arizona. So I came up with an idea. Put an escrow item on the sales of out-of-state property in Arizona, and make sure that that money is deducted, a certain percentage of that money from the profit, and goes to the state of Arizona. If they believe that they still don't owe that taxes, they can file, but that puts the onus on the out-of-state owner. But most of them will not do that because they do owe that money. It would recover the money automatically. And that $8 to $10 million a year would go automatically into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to build affordable housing throughout this state in perpetuity. This is a great solution that actually could work. The sad part is that the lobbyist for the realtors got up and decided to sandbag it because he said it was a new tax. Well, it was not a new tax. The legislative council didn't say it was a new tax. Nobody, no lawyers that I consulted said it was a new tax. It was collecting the existing tax. That's something that takes leadership. We're going to be able to get that bill through. We're going to fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and we're going to end homelessness in Arizona once I am governor.
So I think that's a really good start. But there are a couple of other issues, right, related to homelessness. One is the wages aren't high enough in Arizona for people to be able to afford housing. So one of my first acts will be to create a wage board in Arizona. And it will be made up of representatives from labor and representatives from business. And we'll look across our region at what are the prevailing wages in each major industry sector. And then we're going to work to get tax credits to those companies in Arizona that pay that prevailing wage, right? We keep fighting about what's the minimum wage? And that pits small businesses against the poor people who work for them. I think we need to raise the whole wage level in Arizona. That's number one. That will really help in places like Phoenix and Flagstaff. Number two, again, there is the opportunity here for free money. Now, I'm going to give, so the opportunity zone, here's how it works. If you sell property and the gain on that, if you put that in an opportunity fund, you don't have to pay taxes on it. You don't have to pay capital gains tax on it. That money can be used to invest in designated opportunity zones around Arizona. And there are 25 of them. This was just passed. And many of those places are the exact places where people are are having trouble finding affordable housing. So I think what we need to do is to create a community investment board to figure out how to invest those dollars and to include affordable housing. 2 stories. In California, in the Watts neighborhood, a nonprofit has created an opportunity fund of $500 million. They're building affordable housing, a community center, and a center for workforce training. In Arizona, of course, in Phoenix, there's a group that has created an opportunity fund of $200 million, and they're building a Marriott hotel and upscale homes. I'm done. We're going to redirect that money when I'm done.
The context for this question was marching in activism and people's frustration with not having important social problems solved. I think the context for this question is also leadership, who failed to meet with advocates who are ready and prepared to solve these issues. First step, for all 3 of you to understand, is you're going to be in the governor's office to work on these issues. I know that the governor has not been met with you historically to solve these issues, and I look forward as governor to working with you to come up with ideas to solve these issues. Now, there's a lot of ideas out there, and I'm sure of the 3 or 4 you'll hear up here, you've probably got 10 others in education, and I know I've got plenty as well. But the key is working with local communities and people most invested in this issue and making sure their voices are heard. When I thought of housing, I thought of my time at the legislature. And the only time housing is brought up at the legislature are new home bills that are continuing to be used to kind of forecast our economic markets and models in Arizona. Very little time and attention put on existing housing, in particular affordable housing. We did have a state housing trust land fund, which, by the way, is a good start to begin again. And the state has stayed out of this. Local communities have had fits and starts and have done some work in this area, and I believe that the path forward is continuing that conversation with local communities, with cities and towns to make sure that we can fix this situation in Arizona, where you mentioned that it was Flagstaff and Phoenix as the only 2 counties where you were not able to afford affordable housing. You can't work a minimum wage job and have a modest 2-bedroom apartment in any county in Arizona. And the only way we're going to solve that problem is to recognize it as a problem, come forward, and bring ideas like investment, working with local communities, as well as leveraging federal dollars as well, so that we can address this issue. Thank you.
Next is Jordan Parr, a senior at Mountain View High School in Mesa and the executive director of March for Our Lives, Arizona, a movement dedicated to student-led activism around ending gun violence and the epidemic of mass shootings in our schools today.
Thank you for letting me ask this question. I'm going to be asking a little bit more of a vague question, as we're going to be delving deeper into this hopefully on Tuesday. But since this is the Center for Economic Progress, I wanted to bring to light the fact that gun violence is not just a moral epidemic, but also a drain on our economy in Arizona and nationally for those certain lawmakers who tend to care more about money. According to Giffords, the 2,200 shootings that occur every year in Arizona are a serious threat to our economy, adding up to direct and measurable costs, including healthcare, law enforcement, criminal justice expenses, costs to employers, and lost income. This measurable cost of gun violence in Arizona is $1.9 billion a year, and that does not include the lost income that victims of gun violence, fatal or not fatal, have to endure when they take long times off to heal or die. Furthermore, a large portion of this cost is upheld by actually the taxpayer. Nearly 85% of gunshot victims are either uninsured or some form of publicly funded insurance. Meanwhile, law enforcement efforts are funded entirely by taxpayer dollars, and as a result, the direct cost of gun violence to the Arizona taxpayer is approximately $334 million. Because when someone is shot without health insurance, that goes directly onto the taxpayer and other victims in these hospitals. And so it's important when we're talking about gun violence that it does not just impact the students in our schools. But I can assure you that it is a problem that as a student, a senior at Mountain View High School, we are fearful in our classrooms. There are a lot of other communities who are fearful in their homes, in the streets. They're fearful in the presence of police because gun violence takes the form of suicide, of domestic violence, of police brutality, and all of these are morally wrong, but they also impact our economy. And so my question ultimately is, what is your plan to address gun violence, specifically, not just inside, but also outside the classroom and in our communities of Arizona?
I never want to have to stand in front of a school and say that I wish there was something else I'd done, that I didn't do enough. So there are a couple of things I'm going to do. Number one, I'm going to enforce the laws that are already on the books. I'm going to direct our state troopers to actually arrest people, and we're going to prosecute people. If you leave your gun someplace in an unsecured setting, and it gets used to hurt somebody, you expect to be prosecuted for endangerment. We have some laws on the books that we could be enforcing right now, and we're choosing not to. If you, make a straw purchase, if you buy a gun and you give it to somebody who couldn't buy a gun for some reason, expect to be prosecuted for misconduct involving a weapon. We have laws that should be enforced right now. There was a shooting in 2015 at a gun show here in Phoenix. Well, look, if you're walking down the street and there's a police officer who sees you and hasn't seen you do anything wrong, but thinks you might do something wrong, that police officer can stop you and ask for your identification. Well, everybody who's going in and out of a gun show in Arizona, given the history that we have of shootings actually happening there, I think our law enforcement officers have a right